Miss Pascal, what you're describing is anarchy. Are you an anarchist?
You mean, am I a member?
An anarchist group, yes.
Anarchists have a group?
I believe so, sure.
They assemble?
I don't know.
Wouldn't that completely defeat the purpose?
It was difficult for Harold to imagine Miss Pascal as a revolutionary.
Not now.
Her thin arms
What?
hoisting protest signs, her long, shapely
Nothing.
legs dashing from tear gas. Harold wasn't prone to fantasies, and so he tried his best to remain professional.
Hello, listening people,
Hello.
said Bartek in a very monotone voice.
Who said that?
Said Bartek in a very scared tone of voice.
Who is saying that?
Little did he know that he was recording a podcast that would change the course of his life.
Little did he
forever.
know.
Little did he know.
Oh, you've got agency, narrator.
Uh-oh, now something's going to happen to bring Dustin Hoffman out of his grubby phase.
Okay, Dustin Hoffman, he's got a bit of a nasally voice. He's a guy. Oh, that must be Ryan Slewinski, the other host of Spit and Polish Presents.
Oh, thank you so much. Whoever said that, introducing me. I don't know who it was. Was it you, Bartek?
You know what? It didn't even occur to me to try to do an impression of him. I just did a voice that wasn't mine.
I didn't even tell the difference. That's how good it was.
Yeah. Normally I try, but I didn't even think to try.
Talking about trying, we're here to talk about a movie on the podcast
Why?
today. Why? Because it's Pictures Powwow.
Oh!
That's right. The podcasting show that we do here on Spit and Polish, where we talk about a movie that's come recommended. I recommended the movie this week, and we have a method of choosing films that we cover on the podcast, where one week it is my recommendation, the next it is you, the listening people. So you better tune in to the end of this episode to find out what we will be doing next time. We have a list, so if you want to add to the list, just engage with us, message us on social media or in the email. All of that's in the description below. And then after that, of course, we go to Bartek with a recommendation. You even go extra with your recommendations. You have your own little mini cycle of
Yeah.
recommendations, which is...
Yeah, every second episode, I try to pick something that's not Hollywood.
Is that what's next for you?
Yes.
Well,
Unless the girl who leapt through time happens to be a Hollywood animation.
Yeah, you're right. It secretly was a Hollywood animation, but we're actually talking about a Hollywood movie today.
We are.
We are talking about the 2006 film Stranger Than Fiction, starring Will Ferrell and Maggie Gyllenhaal. What an interesting duo they made in this film, just to say that off the top. But people, if you have not seen this movie before, recommend that you give it a watch for yourself. But to give the basic premise of the film, how would you go about doing that, Bartek? What would you say to someone to try and get them to give this a watch?
Well, I suppose I would say, first of all, spoilers are on now.
I guess the premise itself is just one of those ones where it's like, oh, that's the movie, huh?
Okay, we'll start with this, because this happens early on. We start with an introduction of our main character, and he's living his day-to-day life, and there's a narration. The narration is telling us that he's got basically a routine, and he's just coasting along on this routine. And you see like a very basic outline of his first day of, this film's setting. And then on the second day, when she's doing the narration again, he starts to hear her. And it's basically him dealing with the fact that he's hearing the narration of his life.
That's a great way to say it. People, give this a watch. It's very much worth your time, and it's a joy to see it unfold. I have a history with this movie when back in the day, almost 20 years ago, this film came out.
Mhm.
Almost 20 years ago, I was standing with my family at the video rental store. Oh, Video Easy was its name. I've mentioned Video Easy in the past.
Spelled E-Z-Y.
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you. Did you guys have Video Easy down here? Was that a...
Yeah.
We used to... Yeah, I wasn't too sure if it was just in my state or if it was over Australia in
No,
general.
we
but
had some.
Did you go to Video Easy?
No,
Did you have a video
went
rental store in general?
We went to Blockbusters.
Blockbusters. Were you the type that only got movies from there, or did you also get games? Because people would get
Occasionally,
games.
only occasionally. They had a weird thing where some of them would be like week long, or some of them would be 3 days, and some of them would be one, and that was annoying.
That was annoying. I used to get my games that weren't ones I owned from the library.
Well,
That's where I would
actually,
get
in
games.
our family, we didn't call it Blockbusters. We called it Video Library.
Oh, fancy pants Baltic with the video library. Is that what they call video rental stores in Poland? The video libraries?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that we always said.
But I was there with my family, and it's always that thing of like, someone's going to choose a movie, someone's going to do this, but we're going to have a number of things we get, like maybe 3 or 4 that we would get. And it was up to me to pick my one. And I saw on the TV, because I have a TV in there, and sometimes I'll be playing a movie on there. Oftentimes I'll be playing trailers of movies now available to get in the store itself. And I saw the trailer for Stranger Than Fiction. I was like, hey, this looks very cool. Like, the premise of it was, as you stated, Will Ferrell hearing the narrator go over his life, and then him, again, people, if you haven't seen the movie, you're going to get told to you, searching for who that narrator is because his life is at risk. And I thought that looks very cool. And I had to convince my family to get this. They're like, "Are you really sure you want to get this?" They didn't see the trailer. They just heard my pitch and like, we got it. And it was the favorite out of the ones we got on that particular experience. And I felt very chuffed. I was like, yes, I found a movie. Yes, indeed.
And it was the start of Ryan always being right.
It was the start of me being right. But I've watched it many times. I own it on DVD. And it brings me complicated feelings about Will Ferrell because I like and loathe Will Ferrell. There are things that he's been in that I appreciate and love dear, like this film or even Zoolander. I love him in Zoolander. And then there are things I fucking hate and despise him for. And this one just complicates everything about him so much because it's that thing of I can't say that Will Ferrell isn't talented because he's not just comedically well known. He can be dramatic, but we see it so rarely. And this is an instance, people, in which he's much more dramatic than he is comedic. There is comedy here, but this is less a Will Ferrell comedy in the way that you would associate that phrase to be.
Yeah, even when he's like reacting to the narration, like it is played a little bit for paranoia.
So what was your experiences with Stranger Than Fiction? I told you to go in blind to this.
Yes, and I kept to that, pretty well this time. Normally, my experience with a film that I'm watching for the first time is like, I didn't look anything up about it, but I saw the synopsis. Like, even for this one, like, I didn't do that. I even had a thing where yesterday when I was working, I was telling someone about the podcast that I've talked to a little bit. And they asked me eventually, like, oh, so what's next? I'm like, well, tonight I'm going to watch this film called Stranger Than Fiction. And a lady who was sitting to my other side, who wasn't part of the conversation, but was, I guess, listening in, was like, oh, I've seen that. I'm like, oh, really? I've heard it's interesting. It's like, yeah, it's a very strange film, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. We'll see what's actually like, because, yeah, I didn't know what the premise was at all.
And what was your overall reaction to Stranger Than Fiction?
I really liked this film. This was a really good one.
I'm glad to hear it. I rewatched it again last night. I watched it with my wife. She's seen it several times. She's a big fan. I'm a big fan. I love the idea of it, but I love the presentation. I think the direction is stylish without being show off. I think the music is very well implemented, both just the general score of the movie as well as what popular songs they do put in there. I like the slight surreal touches from time to time without it being too much. I love the performances, of course. I love these characters. I get drawn into each one of these characters, and it's easy to say like this is a Will Ferrell being dramatic movie, but there is also a cavalcade of other actors who are known for being dramatic and comedic, and they're all delivering like pitch perfect blending of the two things. Queen Latifah is in this movie, and this is one of the most straight-laced performances I've ever seen from her. She usually plays over-the-top, eccentric characters in what I've watched of her. And this is the most like grounded person I've ever seen her play in a movie. And I admire it so much. She's one that when we did Bringing Down the House, I talked about like Queen Latifah's like a good actress. You know, she's shown herself. She's got her accolades over the years, but she's not one that everyone kind of brings up a lot in that conversation. But this movie, she's acting off of Dame Emma Thompson now. Not then, but Emma Thompson and her are like a weird duo to pair together, and yet it never feels like there's a wrong note between these two. It never feels like you've got the classically trained British person and the former rapper in you know, like they both feel like they're accomplished actors working together. So yeah, I just have a real affinity for Stranger Than Fiction.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in this film that are very purposeful.
So what do you want to talk about? What do you want to get into first?
Well, I guess at this point, for sure, listening people, spoilers from here on out. Yeah. Sorry, going back to the trailer though. So they only really focused on the whole narration and the
trying
the
to
voices.
trying to find the voice.
Yeah, because I would imagine like there's so many ways you could do a trailer wrong for this film.
Oh yeah,
where there's a whole hand that you could potentially show for this film because it does go through quite a lot of motions. Because yeah, there is that whole aspect of you're hearing the voice and it's not. At least it wasn't for me. I don't know, maybe on a rewatch or if I missed something. It wasn't immediately clear that they were in the same world.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a while for that to actually be established.
He wants it to be that. He wants it to be, oh, this is happening in the real world and I can find the person who's writing this. He never considers it's God, by the way. Never even has a moment of consideration that it could be supernatural or beyond our means. He's like, it has to be a writer then, because Linda Hunt, the great Linda Hunt, tells him like, you've got schizophrenia. But if it's not that, I don't know, talk to someone who knows stuff about books.
Yeah,
I guess.
And I guess in retrospect, there was never really like the fear that like, am I just a fictional being? It never went into that territory.
He's so strong of will in those in his beliefs, which is a part of the movie, is seeing him relinquish or soften or become a little bit more outgoing of a person, go beyond the things of his creature comforts and his routines. And I know this is I don't know, I was going to say, is this a weird comparison? But it's really not. It made me think of Bedazzled with Brendan Fraser as well, where that has a more supernatural element to it, but it's a very similar idea of like this bookworm character who's stuck in their ways, and then through the course of adventures, they have to become a little bit more free and loose.
Yeah, I think this might be a film where like there aren't really any loose comparisons because it is just doing so much, because there is that, whole magical realism premise. There's also like elements that are parodying romance films. The whole climactic conflict ends up being this kind of weird existential thing where like spoilers are off. So he's going to die is something that you find out he's trying to find out like why he's going to die.
And if he can stop it.
And it eventually gets to a point where when he finds out the method behind why he will die and the reason for it, it's established that it's a very profound and meaningful death, and that brings up the question of like, if you're going to die, you want it to have some sort of meaning, and apparently this meaning is like perfect. There is no better way to, die. So, should you let that happen?
It has a lot in here. This film starts out as a almost very clinical, very methodical. You have the text on the screen, the infographics on the screen, reminiscent to what Moon would do a couple of years later, where you have the text on screen that has the shadows and they fall to the ground. And, when he's walking on the zebra crossing, every time he's always stepping on the white lines, they light up and then they fade off when he steps off of them. There's so many surreal things, like his watch, the power of the blue light on that watch is beyond belief, but yet it never feels like it's cranked up to the point where I would say this is a zany film or twee or one that you would look at and say, now that's a film that's absurd or abstract or surreal. It always just rides the line enough.
And they're doing a lot of things that are very like science fiction, but it isn't a science fiction film. It's very funny.
The constant emphasis that the watch is alive and has feelings and it likes things.
The narration
and hates
personifies
things.
it.
But we step off of that enough and focus on like the, I guess, grounded approach of if you were in this bizarre situation, what would you do? It's such an interesting juggling act that I think the film manages to keep pulling off where, yeah, you hear the premise and you could think to yourself, oh, well, that sounds like it could be really avant-garde, absurd, hilarious even, or tragic, but it juggles all of these balls in the air of tone and sensibility, and it does so masterfully. And when you say like, oh, is this a comedy film? I don't know. In my DVD collection, I have this in character films. That's what I put it as, because when I think back on Stranger Than Fiction, I think of it as a character-driven movie, but I have like my genres, and it has... I was looking at it last week. I was like, where's Stranger Than Fiction? I went to comedy because I was like, oh, surely I put it next to the other Will Ferrell comedies, and it wasn't there. I was like, oh, it must be in character then, because it's hard to define.
I was going to bring that up because I was in the room when that happened.
Yep.
And that was another hint to me that like, okay, this is a film that's doing something interesting to where Ryan doesn't know what category that he put it in.
Yep. And I think it's a fair thing to wonder, like, how did you feel about its overall identity, whether it be through the direction or these tones or these performances, the different methods it went about trying to be this elusive thing?
No, I really liked that it was evolving in its, basic tone throughout, because at the start, even at the start of this episode when I was giving that, spoiler-free premise, it's like, oh, that's a great premise for a comedy. It almost seems like a sort of like liar thing where it's like, oh, there's some sort of magical realism problem and like just accept that and see how it plays out. But then it goes into some much more real things, like the person who is narrating and who is, writing the story that he is the main character of, is going through their own thing, and they seem like, a bit of a, written character kind of cliche, like, oh, I'm an artist kind of thing. But then when reality hits them, they have this whole crisis that gives them more depth. Just seeing how it all unfolds. I mentioned before, there's like a sort of parody of like a romance film in this where Maggie Gyllenhaal is this incredibly, written in quotes character who has this whole backstory and these monologues and is this like semi manic pixie dream girl for our main character.
She's an anarchist baker.
Yeah, anarchist baker. And it did ride that line really well too, where it doesn't become like a full-on romance film, even though that is a big premise of it, but it uses those tropes as a storytelling mechanism, and I really liked that, and how at the very end, when everything's resolved, that feels like a much more like genuine, sweet moment to end that whole thread on.
It is just a beautifully crafted movie. One of my favorite visuals is when he goes to speak to the I guess the company, like the IRS psychiatrist or counselor or HR person, the one that his internal monologue almost makes him, like the Emma Thompson monologue narration makes him almost giggle out loud about how it's making fun of this hippy-dippy guy that wants to give him hugs.
Oh, right, yes, him.
That actor, by the way, was Amadeus in the film Amadeus. Yeah.
The Mozart guy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
That's
did
the
not recognize
Amadeus.
him. Didn't recognize
Also
him.
voice of Quasimodo.
Quasimodo, yeah.
But that was him. That's why I'm like, this is a film filled with a lot of returning actors for us. Ones that I'm like, oh, you're in this? I didn't realize. As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, oh, that's Quasimodo. And then I was like, oh, isn't Quasimodo Amadeus? Oh, yeah, it's Amadeus. But I love in that scene the wall where it's painted like clouds. Made me think of Truman Show a little bit too when he's at the edge of the wall. But there's this thing. I had to rewind it because I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is the case. In one shot in particular, you see the clouds are slowly moving behind Will Ferrell's head. The painted wall, it's slowly moving behind his head as he's losing himself in thought. And then we cut, and it's just normal again. Things like that linger with me with this movie. It's like this subconscious manipulation of reality because he himself as a character has to change his views on what it is to be. For him, the IRS and his job is all there is. He has no friends, he has his work friend. But then through the sheer force of narrative that he is confronted by, he has to live with that friend now. And he has to get to know his friend more than as someone from work.
Yeah, and it's a little bit awkward, but also they do some genuine things.
You could take, as Amadeus has said to him, you could use some of your leave to take some break and get it back in touch with yourself. He never even considered that until, again, the narrative came to his door and said, hey, you should take some leave and investigate this thing or yourself.
Yeah, and it was a multi-purpose thing because the goal at that point was like, okay, the narrator is clearly, responding to things that you're doing rather than forcing you to do them. So try to do nothing so that, you can try to trip them up or something along those lines. And, the side effect of that is that like, hey, you have to use your leave, so now also start doing things that you don't normally do. And so you get, the two elements of you're progressing on the mystery of the narrator, but also you're doing a sort of coming of age story. And
a romance story as well.
Mm-hmm.
I love him. There's certain stretches of this movie where it's just like, that's a brilliant little idea. One in particular of him marking down in his journal if it's a comedy or tragedy.
Yeah.
And I just adore that concept of just him walking around and marking what's comedy, what's tragedy, and just saying, I know this makes no sense to you, but I think I'm in a tragedy.
Yeah. And all of that is, both what I was just talking about, what you were just talking about, comes from the thread that Dustin Hoffman gives us in this film, where that is really, that's the very meta thread where it's basically a detective story, but it's with a writing professor.
It is a film that is deconstructing and critiquing how we tell stories and the methods. The little did he know is the reason Dustin Hoffman is like, I'll join you on this because I've taught whole things on little did he know.
Literally changes from like, no, I'm not interested to like, I am going to help you.
It was a very informative 10 seconds.
Exactly, yes. And Will Ferrell calls him out like 10 seconds ago. You didn't care. It's like, well, you said the exact right thing.
I have 23 questions for you. First off, are you happy to know that you're not a golem? I am very happy to know I'm not a golem. Well, there you go. You're not Frankenstein's monster. Let's, I guess, talk about that strand of things. Harold is presented as a very mild-mannered person.
Yep. Harold is Will Ferrell's character.
Not very inquisitive about the world. He knows what he knows, and he does not wish to expand his knowledge or his experiences. But then he's forced to because of this narration, and it's a life-threatening thing. Like, that's the reason he starts to go down this path, and the idea of that is good enough. But then, because the film is so rewarding, they're like, oh, okay, so he goes to go see people that are experts, because he himself is not. So with the information he has, he goes to a psychiatrist first, like he goes to the one at work, and then he goes to a professional one played by Linda Hunt, who's like, you got schizophrenia. That's schizophrenia. She's only in that one scene, but I love Linda Hunt. She's just one of those actresses that you see show up, and you're like, oh, it's Linda Hunt. I love seeing her. She's got a very particular face. I know that they said Brad Bird, the director, not of this film, but of The Incredibles, has said that he based Edna Mode not on Linda Hunt, but I don't believe him. But I know he based it on the costume designer Edith Head, who also does look like Edna Mode, but I couldn't help but see Linda Hunt in this movie and just said, oh, look, it's Edna Mode from The Incredibles. Hello.
Maybe they're the same person.
Maybe I've never seen them in the same room. Very true. But then she puts him on the idea of like, well, if you think this is a narrative, maybe you should speak to someone who knows about literature and narratives. And so we get Dustin Hoffman. And what do you feel, one, about Dustin Hoffman? Like, as an actor in this movie, as well as like what his character brings up? Because I can't recall, have we had Dustin Hoffman appear in a movie on the podcast before?
That's a good question. I'm really not sure.
I don't feel like we really have, but he fits a certain type of archetype that we love to see, which is just eccentric genius type, because he's very clever, he's very smart, but he's such a gross man. He's always like eating. We see him like drinking a coffee while taking a piss at the urinal. Like, he's just so gross, but he's Dustin Hoffman. There's a certain affability to him.
Well, he's playing the sort of archetypal, genius who will completely root out like the core idea of the film. You sort of like, the like an L character from Death Note. Like, oh, I'm the detective. I can, look at all of these minor clues and come to the ultimate truth just from those. He's doing that, but with like storytelling devices in literature. So like you mentioned the 23 questions thing before. He starts it off by saying like, now some of them are going to be ridiculous. You're not going to know why, I'm asking them. And he does literally start with like the most far out things, like basically trying to determine, are you in a fantasy story or a horror film or things like that? And
are you a king?
Are you a king? Yeah. Are you the king of anything?
Are you the king of the lanes? The lanes?
The lanes at the bowling alley. And and then Will Ferrell keeps questioning him and all those. And it's like, well, from the few ridiculous questions I just asked you, I have ruled out
Greek mythology.
I've ruled out like half a dozen different, types of stories. And then eventually, you mentioned before the whole comedy tragedy thing. It's one of these two things. And then Will Ferrell, he now is on board with like, okay, it's going to be one of these two things. And he's got that whole, little notebook where he's trying to look for, tropes and beats of those types of stories. And he does that extensively in one scene with Maggie Gyllenhaal, where it's like, oh, this reaction was like from a comedy film. This one is a bit more tragic.
Dustin Hoffman is very likable as a presence on screen. He's one of the great actors. I must admit, I've not watched a lot of Dustin Hoffman movies.
I think same here.
Most of them have been from this period of his career when he did like Meet the Fockers and this, and he was doing comedy movies, which is what it is. Like, they're good. I like him in this, of course. But he is an actor of great acclaim that I must admit I've got a blind spot for. But I love him every time I see him. He's just got this devil-may-care sensibility to the point where you almost overlook the fact his character's kind of a prick in this movie, because he is the one person that truly knows of Harold's situation, is a part of it, and he doesn't care. He barely cares to learn Harold's name for most of the movie. He barely wants to read the manuscript, and then he eventually gets around to it. And again, spoiler, at the end of the movie, he's disappointed with the ending, because he's looking at this from everything we just said, from the literature standpoint, from the academic. He doesn't really care about the real quality of the situation, where Will Ferrell keeps saying like, this is my life. This is my life. He looks at this, to my eye, his character, from a very just flippant, outsider, academic, this is a fun thing to explore on the side, but I'm also being a lifeguard right now. I'm also eating my yogurt right now. I'm also fixing my coffee machine right now. This isn't like a task for him, but Dustin Hoffman just has such a, again, as I said, likable persona that you almost overlook a character that could be played very differently by a very different actor. Like, this character could come across as way more pig-headed and arrogant, but it's one of those ones where it's like, you have to challenge yourself to realize, like, when he's disappointed with Emma Thompson at the end for not murdering a person for the sake of pure literature. Like, that statement's insane to say, but that's what his character does, and yet I still like him.
Well, there is like a twinge of, investment that he has in things. Like, he does care that, this guy is going to die, but he sees another side of it, and he has that whole scene where it's like, I think you've got to die. And that brings into that immediate reaction there is like, oh, come on, how could you say that? But then that brings up the whole idea about like, oh, meaningful deaths. And like, he actually does make some sort of point.
Yes, but he also pairs that with, it is a masterpiece though. He has both of those. He has you could live your life eating pancakes and just whatever, like, who gets to choose what a meaningful death is? But also, you have to. It's her masterpiece. And it's, those things are equal with him, which is a cool place for a character like him who, for the, let's be real, majority of the story is serving narrative purpose rather than him being a character in his own right. But then you infuse him with all these little quirks, all of these things we're talking about, and it makes him more than just a person who helps push the plot along. It makes him fully fledged and one where we can really sit back and think about him in terms of the themes he offers up, his worldviews, and also, like, what do we think about him as a person overall? Like, that's the kind of joy to be had with this character who, when I watch it, I think about these things, but also I'm just marveling at how every scene has a new gross detail for him, which is amazing. Of course, there's scenes where he's not wearing shoes. I'm like, of course, this guy doesn't want to wear shoes. And then later on, Emma Thompson's also not wearing shoes in a lot of her scenes. Like, oh yeah, they're paralleling these two. Nice.
Man, she's his favorite author.
Of course, she kills people. That's what she does.
He even I like it when he points out that you never brought up the British accent thing.
Yeah, and it's because, again, Harold's not very observant. Like, it takes him ages to think of, like, oh, I should actually write down things she's saying to me.
Yeah, he knows the voice when he hears it, but he never quite describes it.
I'm glad that it's pointed out that he never mentioned the accent, because to me, that's one of the first things I would mention. He did mention it was a woman.
It was the thing that I was noting. I'm like, oh, he hasn't brought up the accent.
But is that also just for how we did at the start of the movie? You just go, well, of course it's a British person. They narrate things. There was a part of that when I first watched the movie back in the day. I didn't really know who Emma Thompson was back then. And I didn't even think, like you, that there was going to be a physical author who is the voice of this character. I just thought, oh yeah, it's the narrator voice, because, you get British people to narrate, or James Earl Jones, like one of the two.
And she is doing this like very, pleasant narration voice. And, when you meet her character, it actually did take me a minute or two to realize, like, oh, that's the narrator. Not even literally the same performer, but that is the narrator. Because
she's so different.
Yeah, she's the third person writing voice of the book that Harold is the main character of.
Emma Thompson is a treasure. This is such an Emma Thompson character. She often plays these acerbic, foul but intellectually stimulating characters. I like Emma Thompson as a person. She's very fun to watch in interviews. She's very, over the top, and she just says things, and she catches people off guard because she's Dame Emma Thompson, but she says the most foul-mouthed, disgusting shit ever. She's had an interesting career. Like, I remember one of her first things was being in The Young Ones with Rick Mayall and all of that, and she was like a part of the University Challenge episode where she's like a rich tosser. It's like her and Stephen Fry used to do comedy together. Now she's the Shakespeare lady. She is this person. She's in the Harry Potter movies, of course. She's in a million things, and she's Oscar nominated for this and did this. And in this movie, I'm like, that's just Emma Thompson. She's doing good work, but I'm like, that's just Emma Thompson. And then I read the trivia, Emma Thompson didn't wear makeup for this movie. I'm like, of course, she's just being Emma Thompson.
I read that trivia too. I'm like, that was a good choice. Yeah, it led to, it complemented well her, sort of crazy vibe that she had.
We'll talk about her, but I want to pair it with this because this is a movie made up of a lot of bits, a lot of bits that could be their own movies, but they are stitched together nicely here, or woven together, I should say. Like, I didn't feel like this movie was disparate elements, but like there's this whole bit with Emma Thompson as like the writer with writer's block, and she's assigned the assistant from the publisher, and they have like a mistrustful relationship. That's a movie. You could make a movie out of that. Like you could make a whole thing out of that, and yet it's just one element of the film. And I just wanted to get your takes on, like, did the film have that for you in some way, like that element of like, oh, we have the rom-com section, we have this section. Did it work for you, or did you find like, there's just too many little bits here that like are fighting for space?
In general, it worked. The few things that like kind of I feel mixed about, ones that I can kind of dismiss. Like we brought up Queen Latifah before. I really liked her in this film, but also I kind of don't know if like she was properly used enough.
Okay.
Because yeah, she has a lot of great back and forths with Emma Thompson, but I don't know what purpose she ultimately served.
She's the one that lets Harold read the manuscript. Emma Thompson would never have let him read it on her own volition, I don't believe. Queen Latifah's character is the one that's like, let him read it.
Okay.
That's what I boil it down to, is like, to me, that's the dynamic there. Like, she's the more empathetic humanist side, the more normal side, like when they're at the hospital and Emma Thompson's like, where are the dead people at? And you just have Queen Latifah shake her head in the background. To me, that's like the biggest twist, but I can see your point.
If I can accept that one moment is enough justification, then yeah, I guess. With the rom-com stuff, I really did like the whole aspect that I brought up before about how like, oh, this is a written character, and the narrative didn't place, too much investment on this being like, a romance film. When it did start to become a little bit more of a romance film, like, okay, I kind of didn't have as much of the prior investment because I did think of this character as being, fictional. So when she did become like real, it did take me a while to actually, come to terms of like, okay, I should actually care about this a little bit more.
Yes. I feel like there could have been more time on the romantic element. Maybe also because I think just Maggie Gyllenhaal is very charismatic in this movie, and her and Will Ferrell have good like chemistry, weirdly enough. Who would have thought that these two would be in a romance in a movie together? But I thought they clicked quite well. Maggie Gyllenhaal is a fantastic actress. This is, one of those films I think of her for. Her character is funny. That also helps. Like, she has some great lines in this as well. But yeah, there's many things to pluck at. Like, with Emma Thompson, there's like a whole series of moments where she dies, and then it's like, oh, you reveal she's actually just thinking about how the character could die. And they bleed in little bits that we've already been set up, like the boy on the bike or the woman applying for a job who then becomes a bus driver. So they are already threaded throughout the movie. And so when you get to the end point where those two characters are in part responsible for what Harold's death is supposed to be, there's a sense of it being earned. It's like, okay, we have gotten these people before. That's nice. And yet we've also masked it previously in what are very just funny scenes of Emma Thompson ghoulishly talking about death and just being like, I saw this photo of a woman who jumped off a building, and she's like describing it as like this serene, beautiful thing, while Queen Latifah's just like disgusted at her enthusiasm.
That should be pointed out. The climactic scene of the film did, once you look at the overview of the entire thing, did bring together elements that were all there, because all the scenes of the kid was him on his bike, his very distinct bike with the downward handles, recklessly kind of bumping into people and causing varying levels of misfortune, whether it's like, oh, I hosed your dress, I'm sorry, to, oh, the car fell into the river.
And he just kept riding all along.
Yeah, and you get constant references to the bus in the film. They even talk about like whatever the company or the whole transport system of the bus is, that's related. And the central mystery, which I know we've probably already talked about multiple central mysteries, but the other one being,
How is he going to die?
yeah, how is he going to die? You mentioned before the little did he know, this little moment of him asking someone what the time is would lead to his unfortunate death or something like that. And, you know, that shocks him to his core because he can hear the narration. How does this lead to my death? And so the mystery is, how am I going to die? And when you find out how he dies, it is from all of these elements coming together.
But it's not just an exercise of how clever was that. That's the important thing, because movies like this could fall into the, oh, well, wasn't that clever? Oh, look how that all snapped into place. Movies and shows can fall into that. What it does do is make sure to make you feel a lot about when it happens. Like, you have the moments where Harold himself reads it and he gives it back to Emma Thompson and says, I love your book. I like the bit with the guitars. That was fun. But I see the ending and I accept it. I accept my own death. And you as a viewer have to have it be acceptable to you beyond just the stimulation of like, oh, look how smart the movie was with how it set up the things. It makes you care. The way he dies is noble, and it ties into Emma Thompson's final point of why she kept him alive. Like, there's something about people like that you just want good for. And that's how I felt when I watched it back in the day and last night, where you see what his death is supposed to be. And not only am I just sitting there stroking my chin going, oh, yes, look at all the pieces. I'm still getting emotional thinking about like, oh, that was it is good. It is profound. It is moving. It is a self-sacrifice on another level because of the overall construction of the movie. But it is something where it just genuinely chokes me up a little. I'm like, yeah, that's nice.
Well, and because the big thing is that, you know, Dustin Hoffman and then eventually when Will Ferrell reads it, they both accept that, like, this is a very meaningful and, you know, desirable, you know, death in terms of, like, what it means. And because it is talking about a story from a very meta point of view, you, the viewer, have to kind of accept it like, oh, you know, I might not necessarily feel the poignancy that they feel because I'm getting it from a secondary perspective. Hence, even in the lead up to the death, like, the narration of the film is telling you, basically counting down to when it happens, like, oh, this is the night before the death, this is the morning of the death, this is him on the way to the death's about to happen, here's the death. Like, it's constantly telling you, you know, it's about to happen, here it comes. But because you understand where the characters are coming from and what they're feeling, you can accept that, you know, this is all being telegraphed to you. This isn't the film, you know, throwing spoilers at you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the film using the, you know, everything that it's done to, you know, tell its unique story.
It also makes sure to drop the narration at several points. And that perturbs him as well, because it's like, okay, am I free? Am I doing stuff I'm not supposed to? But then the narration will come back. And there's even this conversation of like, is it telling parts of the story that because I'm a character in the story, I am not aware of? And I need to find out what those parts are, which is a cool detail. But then after a certain point, that concern of like when the narration isn't happening fades away because he and you are invested in what he is experiencing, what he is going through, this romance, this desire to learn the guitar, to connect with his friend about space camp, and all of these moments, these little slices of life, which is what he's supposed to be engaging with, is life. Be alive, live your life, do stuff. If you want to do these things, go out and do them, or just eat pancakes. Just, you know, like, hey, depends the quality of the pancake. Which
Find what matters to you and do it.
There's so many things like that. But I'm trying to think, what are other things to mention in terms of like within the movie? Because I do want to talk about some of the external stuff like Will Ferrell and where he stands in terms of filmography.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess, what do you feel about his death and then the subsequent retraction of that? Because the movie itself has a dialogue about it, but what did you feel overall?
Yeah, so we should point out, he eventually meets the author and narrator She gets very disturbed by the fact that like this is a real thing that's happening, and she has a whole moral quandary where she's questioning about like past stories she's written, because
I've killed 8 people.
yeah, we forgot to mention like every single book she's written has been loved, and every single one has involved killing the main characters. It's like the thing she's known for.
Cruelly killing them as well.
Cruelly killing them. And so she has this little monologue where she like talks about 2 specific characters. It's like, I killed the school teacher the day before summer vacation. Like, how cruel was that? And that wasn't her being sadistic. That was her like thinking about this person as a real person, and going forward, like she's going to potentially do the same thing to Will Ferrell before she finds out that he's a real person. I think literally like the same day she comes back to the office and tells Queen Latifah, like, I've thought of the perfect ending.
She's very happy.
She's very happy. She's like not as quirky, almost a little bit timid, like, oh, I'm gonna do it now. Yeah. And then she gets disturbed by the phone call. She's starting to see that like her narration's happening. The phone rings again. The phone rings one more time, and every time after she types the sentences, there's a ring.
That's the type of scene that you sell a movie on, by the way. Like when you hand in the script, that's the scene that's like, okay, I'll make the movie.
Earlier in this episode, when I said there are so many different things you could do in the trailer, that would definitely be one of them. And then she meets Will Ferrell, and just complete shock. The character basically changes, or more.
He has to try and convince her too. It's like, well, you won't kill me now that you've met me. And she's like, and then she's like, I don't know how the rules work. Like, I've written an outline. An outline, does that mean it kills me? I don't know. Is it, do I type it? But there's that part of her that's like, yeah, but I really like this idea. But she has to get in touch with reality, because she's been doing all of these, amoral things to find the death. Like, she goes to hospitals, she goes to do this, she's standing out in the rain thinking about jumping off buildings. Like, she's doing all of these things that are just make us and Queen Latifah kind of raise an eyebrow.
Yeah,
but at the end,
very eye-rolly, like, oh, the artist.
But now she meets someone, because all she's doing is thinking about the work and thinking about like how she can do a cool death, but she's forgotten about thinking of these characters as real people. So then she actually meets a character who's a real person, and it challenges her about her entire work behavior, about like, oh, I've not been thinking about them as, obviously she has that monologue that you talked about, but on a bigger level, it's about how she's a writer that's forgotten how to think of her characters as real people. So then she meets the real person who says, you won't kill me now that you've met me, right? And she pauses on that for a second. It's like, and then we get the way things go. But then, his death, sacrificing himself to save a child. The bus driver feels distraught about it. The watch comes into play as well. Like, we see that crack on the windshield and hit him in the face.
Yeah, the child feels guilty.
They try to say, no, it's not your fault. It is his fault. That fucking little turd child. But no. Let's not be mean to children, Bartek. It's not the child's fault. I love that death stuff. When I initially watched it, I kind of hated the ending, because I was like, I was kind of like Dustin Hoffman. I was like, no, I think it would have been better if he died. I think it would have been fine if this movie ended on a sad note.
I can accept a different version of this film where they do that, because again, like they do sell you on the positives of like, oh, if you let the death happen, there's going to be meaning to it. But it's a very sweet note to end on. Like, she changes the ending of the story. Dustin Hoffman, I know you phrased it earlier as him being like, oh, like disappointed, like, oh, you changed the story. It's just okay now. I do see there being a little bit of an element of like, it's not the great masterpiece work that you could have done, but there is, it's okay. You can still do this. It's not bad.
She has to rewrite it, but she can't kill him, because if he's the type of person that's going to die knowing so and faces it as he did, there's the type of people you want to keep around. I've warmed to that over the years, because initially I kind of rejected this ending because it was like, oh, it's a Hollywood, we can't have a sad, it has to be happy, it has to be this upbeat message about life. I do have one complaint, one major complaint. It's a moment of comedy that really does not work for me because it interrupts the flow of tone, which is the doctor that talks to him when he has woken up from being hit by a bus.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He is just a comedic character. Like, he's just like, oh, you're very lucky, dumb, but lucky. And his whole entire stance, like, that's one of those ones where it's like, no, I don't need this in the movie. Just be normal. Just be a normal person.
One, he's kind of blowing off the tone of the situation, and two, you know, there isn't the believability that this is a written character, like what I was saying with the girlfriend earlier. This is, you know, is supposedly just a real person in this real world.
Yeah, he was just a moment where he kind of just is a speed bump in the road of like what we're doing here. Because after that, it goes back to the nice, sweet sensation and Maggie Gyllenhaal. Although, if I was him, I would tell Maggie Gyllenhaal to not lay on me after having been hit by a bus. That was one of those ones like, do not lay on this man. He's fucking got broken ribs.
No, let it happen. It's very real.
I mean, she's hot. I'll give him that. Like, yeah, she's hot. But, like, dude, you'd be fucking in agony from her sitting on you. She's draped all over him. It was the first thing I thought.
Will Ferrell doesn't even want.
But I've warmed to it over the years. I must admit. I read that this was inspired partly by, like, I think it was a Spanish story. There's a book. And in that original book, he kills himself. It just says he commits suicide. I don't know if it's because of this context or like the situation is so maddening for him. I don't know.
Yeah, if it's a different story.
But let's talk about Will Ferrell. What did you think of him in this movie overall? His performance, and what do you think of him as a performer? We've had him on the podcast a few times. I actually questioned at the end of last, but we have had him on a few times.
We've had him on 4 times, twice as a lead, I think.
Yes, but what do you think of him in this movie and him overall as a person/performer?
I like Will Ferrell. I know that you're not the biggest fan of some of his comedy stuff.
Step Brothers can go to hell.
I've always liked his comedy stuff, the over the top kind of thing. It just kind of appeals to me. But I do like seeing different sides of him. Like even in Bewitched, you know, he was a bit of a main character that, you know, is working towards a goal. And I think it's been a while. I think I've seen him in interviews where, you know, he's not being a character and he's like a well-spoken guy.
There's a very interesting documentary that came out last year
about his best friend
about his best friend who's transitioned and them riding in a car across America. It's supposed to be very good.
Yeah.
Who would have thought he would do a documentary like that? You know? Like,
well, that's the thing. Like, he's the producer of some films, I think. So I've always liked him, and I liked seeing this film where, you know, it does a little bit of like comedic stuff where he's like, you know, reacting to the narration. But yeah, just seeing him play a very real feeling character going through a sort of like genuine coming of age story in a way. I really enjoyed seeing that. And, you know, I read that, you know, some people were very upset that he didn't get any sort of nomination for this film. And I think, yeah, that's a very fair snub to point out. I think he was very genuine in this film.
Have you seen him be dramatic before? Or has it always been those over-the-top comedy characters?
I don't know if I've seen him in a film where he's like done 100% sincere, but I think of the Lego Movie as being one example, because in that, you know, I guess spoilers for the Lego Movie, you know, for most of it, it is the story that you see in the trailers of like, oh, this wacky over-the-top woohoo Lego world where he's President Business, the big bad capitalist villain. But then, you know, the twist at the end is that the whole film is kind of like this film, actually, a child playing with these Lego figures and having a lot of control over the world. And the President Business character that Will Ferrell voices is based on their distant father, who isn't played for comedy like at all.
No.
And I remember that being like a, you know, very dramatic and also in terms of the resolution of that film, like sweet moment of the film. And like, oh, they got crazy funny man Will Ferrell to do this. That was impactful for me.
Yeah.
And seeing this film, it was like, oh yeah, they're playing a little bit more into that.
This is one of the more dramatic roles I've seen him do. I think he has like one or two others in his career, but he doesn't really do that. He doesn't really flex these acting muscles. He does his comedy stuff, which, hey, that's fine. I don't mind, comedy is great, and I've enjoyed him in comedies. I love him in certain things, but I wish that he would do more stuff like this. These more, because he did Ricky Bobby right before this.
Yeah.
Then this, then the one where he's a ice skater, and then semi-pro. It was like in that stretch of like those movies where the pitch is Will Ferrell plays this sports thing,
Yeah,
and it has
that's a good point.
and it has a stupid haircut in each one. And in amongst those, he also did this. And that's what bugs me about him is I think he is talented. I found him very funny. I like, Anchorman. I like Talladega Nights. I like certain roles of his. I mean, I have to like that movie. It does have Gary Cole giving one of the best performances of his career as his shitty dad.
I like Ricky Bobby as well.
And, him and John C. Reilly can be very good together. I hate Step Brothers. If we ever cover Step Brothers, I may kill myself. But he is talented. But, there are these comedians or these comedic actors like Adam Sandler, where once in a blue moon, they do a somewhat more dramatic performance and you say, holy crap, there it is. Jim Carrey, you mentioned Liar Liar earlier. Great example of he's shown a lot more in his career, that sensibility. It doesn't feel like with Jim Carrey, it's like, oh, every once in a while he'll do a more serious movie. I think he is leaned towards 60% comedy, 40% drama, in his career, I would say at this point.
Okay.
Where it's some people just love Jim Carrey for the comedy and some people love him for the drama. That type of performer. Will Ferrell, he bugs me because this movie exists, showing me that he can do more and he doesn't do more and he just does screaming. That's his comedy in a lot of his movies is a screaming. I scream, I yell a lot. His character in The Other Guys is a bizarro evil version of Harold in this movie where it's the bookworm, mild-mannered, blah, 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 blah. I hate The Other Guys. There's so many movies where it's not only do I hate them, I hate him specifically in them. But then I feel bad because he has brought me a lot of joy, not only because of comedies, but because of a film like this where I just hang my head low and say, Will, why aren't you doing more stuff like this? And it's that cynical part of my brain just goes, well, because they don't earn enough. I don't know how well this did, financially speaking, or even critically speaking. We enjoy it. I know many people enjoy it, but I don't know if it ever got big word of mouth. Think about it. This was in amongst the height of his film career.
No, yeah,
no one talks about this one.
It was a very genuine laugh when you were listing the things immediately before and after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just one of those things where I like him as an actor, but he doesn't like me. It feels because he chooses these fucking annoying movies where it's I know you're more of a fan, but I think you and I have been in enough circles, we've done the podcast long enough, where Will Ferrell's kind of the face for many people of awful modern American comedy affair, where it's just oh, yep, it's the modern comedy movie where Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart are going to be in a movie where it's racist because why not? Or Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg's going to be in a movie where it's sex. Yeah, these things it's a movie where John C. Reilly and him play Sherlock Holmes and Watson because, well, I guess they must.
I think Adam Sandler might be a bit more of that for me.
But he's longer term. He's been around, I guess, yeah, that too.
I feel when
Adam Sandler has an industry.
Yeah, I feel when people talk about bad comedy by that actor, I would think of Adam Sandler.
I think Jack Black's climbing the ladder real fast nowadays, where people just see Jack Black's face and it's oh, of course he's in the Minecraft movie. Of course he's in Borderlands. Of course he breaks up Tenacious D because he's a coward. But I do feel there are these actors.
Well, no, we broke up Tenacious D.
Yeah, we did it. I do feel there are actors like Will Ferrell where it's just they do have a certain persona that either brings you in or repels you. And here's one where he does both for me. I've seen movies in the cinema with Will Ferrell in them and I'm yay, Will Ferrell. And then other ones I'm oh no, Will Ferrell. Do you have a favorite Will Ferrell role? to use? Like, is there one that you go, nah, that's the Will Ferrell character or role in particular I like? For me, it's Megatu. It has to be. I love him in Zoolander.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess Talladega Nights is the one I always go to first. I know that's more typical into the industry of the ones that you don't like, but I enjoy that.
No,
one.
I like him in that one, but I mean, he does have the iconic "I don't know what to do with my hands." There's many great moments, and if there's anyone I don't like in that movie, it's Sacha Baron Cohen. But that's a story for another time. I do not like him in that movie, but I like everyone else. I mean, isn't which one is it? Is it Michael Clarke Duncan? Or Ving Rhames as like the big black guy in that movie. And there's like the cut scene in the credits where they're like trying to get the knife out of Ricky's leg and they just keep stabbing more knives in his leg to try and pry it out. That's like one of my favorite comedy moments, and it's like a blooper reel scene in the credits. I'm like, you should have kept that in the movie. I keep forgetting that it wasn't in the movie.
I remember the knife thing. I can't remember who it was though.
But that is pretty much all I have to say about Stranger Than Fiction. I just wanted to take the time to at least mention Will Ferrell, because this is an oddity in his career. This is you don't get this type of you don't get these type of movies in his career. Like, why hasn't any other big directors tried to get him? Like, he would be great in a Wes Anderson movie. I feel.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see him in
But
some sort of auteur film.
it just hasn't happened. Like, I guess Austin Powers is what we get.
Quentin Tarantino, you got one more film in you, get this guy.
I do love him in those Austin Powers movies too.
Mustafa?
Yeah. He's only in the first two, right?
Yeah. And he only gets to interact with Austin in the second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he dies in both.
Now, are you curious to hear what we will be talking about next time on the podcast? Are you curious to know? You're not curious.
I can accept. I can go for finding out what it is.
All right.
I could go for knowing what film to watch in a few days.
Okay. In a few days.
Go for it. Yeah.
By the way, it was Michael Clarke Duncan. He was like the manager guy. That's an actor I miss. Michael Clarke Duncan. He was always great in every movie he was in. Gone far too soon. He's one where it's like, you remember that Ben Affleck Daredevil movie that exists?
You've told me about it.
He plays Kingpin in that, and it's one of those times where it's like everyone just liked Michael Clarke Duncan as Kingpin. They're like, he was great in a terrible movie. There was like, oh, he was great. That was great. He was good. But we will be talking about a filmmaker who is maybe guilty of a lot of the things I said this movie sidestepped. The, oh, aren't I clever? But in fact, they're dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a guess? Do you have a guess of a filmmaker who's like, "Ooh, aren't I clever?" but they're actually dumb? Does that ring any alarm bells for you?
It's making me think of like So Bad It's Good directors, but I don't remember if any of those are on our listening people list.
No, I mean technically, we are going to be covering The Village by M. Night Shyamalan.
I don't remember that being on the list. Who recommended this one?
Amanda recommended The Village.
My friend Amanda?
Yes.
Right.
Which many people claim to be the tipping point of his career for people out there. People are like, oh, The Village is the one where we turned against him. There was Lady in the Water somewhere in there. I think that was after The Village. I can't recall. It was like The Sixth Sense, everyone likes. Unbreakable, underrated, but nowadays everyone, is like, oh, it's great. Signs, which is the one where people are like, oh yeah, it's good. Like, yeah, people liked it. And then The Village, where, the ship is nearing the iceberg. But I can't wait to talk about it because, without getting too heavy in it, I've seen it a couple of times, and it's a movie that I have a lot of fondness for, but also a lot of anger for. It's like one of those movies where I am curious to revisit this as an adult. I don't think I've watched this since I was like maybe just before I came down to Melbourne. Like it's maybe one of those movies I saw like a year or two before finished, like when I was in the final years of finishing high school is probably the last time I've watched it. But it's one of those ones that's like, it lingers. But we'll talk about The Village, M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. next time with your boy Joaquin Phoenix is in that movie.
Oh.
Your boy. You love that guy.
Yeah.
Your mum's a big fan.
My friend, Joaquin Phoenix.
Your best friend. Your best friend, Joaquin Phoenix.
We're not talking right now, but yeah.
We're not talking right now. He pulled out of a movie he wrote about gay men at the last second and completely defunded the movie. Did you hear about that?
No, what's this?
Joaquin Phoenix teamed up with, I'm forgetting which director. I think it was a well-known director. It's a well-known director. And it was about, gay men. And Joaquin Phoenix wrote the movie and he pitched the movie and he's going to be the lead in the movie. And right up to the moment of filming, he backed out. Just backed out and he completely destroyed the film because the budget went with him and it just fucked everything up. And everyone's really mad at him for doing that because it seems weirdly cowardly.
When was this, sorry?
Like within the last year.
Oh.
Within the last year, he was going to be in a movie that he was the fucking pioneer for. He was the guy like, let's do this movie, and then randomly just said no and backed out. And people are like, is it because he's afraid of playing a gay character? We don't know. It's one of those things. He's a very interesting guy. Like, he's backed out of projects before. I think Ridley Scott had to convince him to play Napoleon because he was super nervous at the idea of it. Like, he's a phoenix. Of course they're weird. He grew up in the weird cult, so of course he's a bit peculiar. But that was the last big thing that I heard about Joaquin Phoenix was he backed out of a movie he created, basically,
Wow.
and enlisted talent for. And people are like, is it because he had to play a gay guy? We don't know.
No,
So that's why you're not talking to him. He backed out of your movie, Barton.
I did not hear about that. And Joaquin, if you're listening, we are not talking for longer than we're already currently not talking for.
Until you make that movie, buddy. Okay? But that's all. Thank you all so much for listening. It's been a pleasure talking about Stranger Than Fiction. Bartek, where can people find the podcast and how can they contact us?
You can find us, who are the podcast, online, on the internet, the World Wide Web. At what URLs? You can go to the one that's x.com, which we call Twitter. There's Facebook.
Which we correctly call Twitter.
There's the Facebook.com, where on both of those websites, our profiles or pages are Spit and Polish Presents. I think Twitter at Spit Polish Pre, because character limits. We are also on youtube.com, where we've got the YouTube channel Spit and Polish Presents. All of our episodes are uploaded onto there with, unique thumbnails. We never really point this out, but on both Facebook and Twitter, we tend to post like different promotional images for a little bit of fun. Sometimes they're the same if there's just not enough images, but there's a bit of variety wherever you go. And if you want to contact us directly, you can go to whatever email website you use to log into your email address and type in spitandpolished@gmail.com as the person to send something to, and that's where we'll receive it. And on any of those platforms, you can recommend us a film to be put onto the list we've mentioned for the Listening People's Choice, and maybe, just maybe, at the end of a Ryan pick episode, we'll get to mention the film that you picked, and then
I would hope so.
the episode after, we'll talk about it.
Yeah? Oh my god, yeah, we'll talk about it. Bartek's so excited. He's so keen. But we better get out of here because I hear M. Night knocking at our door saying, you better not talk shit about me next week, boys. And I'm really scared of M. Night. He's got very intimidating eyes. I watched Lady in the Water, where he looked directly into the camera and it was marketed as a genius that would save the world. Oh, I can't wait to talk about M. Night again. Have we only talked about one good M. Night movie and the others have been bad? Like, we've done Unbreakable. Then we've done Lady in the Water and Glass. We never did Split.
No.
And now we're doing, okay, The Village, ? We'll leave that. But currently, we're stacked in against his favor in terms of the movies that most people think are good movies, or we found to be good movies.
Oh, no, it's been a few years, but didn't we like Glass?
No! Fuck you!
Oh, I couldn't even keep a straight face for that one. Is there cinema sins on this film? Because this feels like a film that would get dinged all over.
Ding! He didn't think it was God. Ding!
The film's good enough that it earned the suspension of disbelief.
That's the point.